A small classroom in Japan. No teacher at the front, no shouting, no chaos. Just a group of 6 year olds quietly cleaning the floor together. One child spills water. He pauses, looks at it, then calmly reaches for a cloth and wipes it himself. No one tells him to do it. No one rewards him. No one even reacts. And yet, he knows exactly what to do. Now shift the scene, a different classroom. Same age, same intelligence, but here instructions are repeated. Voices rise, behavior is corrected again and again. Don't do that. Stop. Listen. So, what's the difference? Why do some children seem to develop self-discipline so early, almost naturally, while others need constant correction? For years, experts pointed to rules, to strictness, to punishment. But the data doesn't fully support that, because in Japan, the system looks softer, quieter, less controlling, and yet the outcome is stronger, which raises a strange question. What are Japanese parents doing differently? Before discipline is ever needed? There's a hidden mechanism behind this, a way of shaping behavior long before behavior becomes a problem. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. When people first hear that Japanese children are more self-disciplined, the conclusion feels obvious, almost too obvious. They must be raised with stricter rules, more control, more correction, more don't do that. It's the kind of assumption that makes sense until you actually look closer, because when researchers stepped into Japanese homes and classrooms, what they found didn't match that picture at all. There were no constant reminders, no repeated warnings echoing across the room, no visible system of tight control holding everything together. In fact, it felt quieter, more relaxed. And that's where things start to get interesting, because despite that softer surface, the outcome tells a completely different story. By the time these children reach school age, something has already shifted. They wait their turn. They manage frustration better. They cooperate without being pushed, not perfectly, but consistently. So now the question changes. If it's not strictness, then what is it? Researchers in developmental psychology have been circling this question for years. Comparing cultures, observing patterns, looking for the hidden variable, and again, one difference keeps showing up. Not in what parents do, but in when they do it. In many Western approaches, discipline begins the moment behavior becomes a problem. A child acts out. The parent reacts, the correction follows. It's immediate, it's visible, it feels logical. But here's the twist. By the time behavior shows up, the real work is already late. Because in Japanese parenting, the focus doesn't start at the moment of misbehavior. It starts long before that moment ever arrives, much earlier, before the outburst, before the resistance, before the need to correct anything at all. The question isn't, how do I stop this? It's quieter than that, more strategic. What makes this behavior unnecessary in the first place? And that shift, subtle as it sounds, changes the entire direction of parenting, because now you're not reacting to behavior, you're designing it, not controlling outcomes, but shaping conditions. And when the conditions are right, something unexpected happens. The behavior you were trying to fix doesn't need fixing anymore. It never fully forms, which means discipline isn't something you apply later. It's something that CAS have been building quietly all along. And this is where the first hidden layer begins to come into focus. Because what looks like calm on the surface is actually the result of something far more intentional underneath. There's a word at the center of this entire approach, a word that doesn't translate cleanly into English, shitsuke. Most people hear it and think it simply means discipline, rules, manners, proper behavior. But that translation misses the point, because shitsuke isn't about controlling what a child does. It's about shaping who a child believes they are. And that difference is everything. Imagine two situations. In one, a child throws their toys on the floor. The parent steps in immediately. Pick that up. Maybe there's a consequence, maybe a warning. The child complies, the behavior is corrected, problem solved, or is it? Because the next day, it happens again. Now look at a different approach. No big reaction, no lecture, just a quiet, repeated pattern built into everyday life. After playtime, everything goes back. Not once, not twice, every single time, no drama, just consistency. At first, it feels like effort, then routine, then something shifts. The child stops thinking, I have to clean up. They start thinking, this is what I do. And here's the twist. That small shift from action to identity is where real discipline begins. Because when behavior is tied to identity, it no longer depends on supervision. You don't need reminders for something that feels like part of you. You don't need rewards for something that feels natural. And this is where many systems quietly break down. When discipline is built only on rules, it works, but only under pressure. Remove the authority, remove the consequences, and the behavior disappears with it. But Shitsuke doesn't rely on pressure. It relies on repetition, on modeling, on small rituals that seem insignificant in the moment, but compound over time. A child watches how you speak, so they speak that way. A child sees how you treat shared space, so they treat it the same. Not because they're told to, because they've absorbed it. And slowly, almost invisibly, something forms. A sense of self. I'm someone who takes care of things. I'm someone who respects others. I'm someone who follows through. That identity becomes a guide, not rules, not fear, not rewards. And once that identity is in place, behavior doesn't need to be enforced anymore. It follows on its own. But even that isn't the full picture, because knowing what to do and actually doing it in a difficult moment are two completely different things. A child can understand the rule, they can even believe in it, and still fall apart when emotions take over. So the question becomes, what happens in that moment when frustration hits, when something feels unfair, when things don't go their way? That's where the second layer begins. Mimamoru, a quiet concept, easy to misunderstand, even harder to practice. It means loosely to watch over while allowing space. And at first, it feels wrong because everything in you wants to step in. The moment a child struggles, the instinct is immediate. Fix it, guide them, calm it down quickly, end the discomfort. But here's the twist. That discomfort is doing something important. It's creating a window, a small, uncomfortable window where the child has to figure something out on their own, and that's where growth lives. Picture this. A child trying to tie their shoes. They get frustrated, their hands fumble, they sigh, maybe they even get a little upset. You step in too early, and the moment disappears. You wait just a little, and something else happens. They try again, slower this time, more focused, and when they finally get it, even partially, something shifts inside them. Not just skill, confidence. That's Mimamoru in action, not ignoring, not abandoning, just holding back long enough for the child to engage with the struggle. Because in those small moments, something invisible is forming. Emotional regulation, the ability to pause instead of react, to try instead of give up, to recover instead of collapse. But when intervention is constant, a different pattern forms. Every struggle is removed before its experience. And without realizing it, the message becomes clear. You need me to handle this. Over time, that message sticks. It follows them. But Mimamoru sends a different signal, quieter, but far more powerful. I believe you can handle this. And belief changes behavior. Because when a child feels trusted, they start to act in ways that match that trust. They try longer, they give more effort, they begin to rely on themselves, and this is where discipline shifts again. Not from rules, not just from identity, but from something deeper. A growing belief, I can handle hard things. And once that belief starts to take root, everything else begins to follow. So how does this actually show up in real life? Because ideas sound powerful until you try to use them in the middle of a messy emotional moment. That's where most approaches break, but this one doesn't start with something complicated. It starts with something almost invisible, a pause. The next time your child gets frustrated, maybe they drop something, maybe they can't figure something out. Watch your instinct. It will be fast, step in, fix it, solve it. But instead, wait just a few seconds, not long enough for them to feel alone, just long enough for them to do something. And here's what often happens in that tiny gap. They try, maybe awkwardly, maybe imperfectly, but they engage, and that moment, right there, is where self-discipline begins. Not when they succeed, when they choose to try again. Now take that same idea and stretch it across the day. This is where the second shift comes in. Daily rituals, not big ones, not overwhelming ones, small things, repeated consistently. A child puts their shoes back in place every day. They carry their own plate after eating every day. They organize their school bag every day. No reminders, no pressure, just quiet expectation. And over time, something subtle happens. It stops feeling like effort. It becomes automatic because repetition does something rules can't. It builds identity. And once identity is in place, correction becomes unnecessary. But here's another layer most people miss: a simple question, and it changes everything. Instead of reacting to behavior, pause and ask, what skill is missing here? Not, why are they doing this? But, what can't they do yet? Because behavior is often just a signal. A child shouting might lack communication. A child giving up might lack patience. A child melting down might lack emotional regulation. And when you start seeing it that way, your response changes. Less reaction, more direction, more intention. And here's the twist: these changes don't look dramatic at first. There's no instant transformation, but they stack quietly, day by day, until one moment catches you off guard. They handle something differently, calmer, smarter, more independently. And you realize something has been building this whole time. Not just better behavior, a completely different way of facing the world. At some point, you stop noticing the effort, not because it disappeared, but because it transformed. The change doesn't arrive like a breakthrough moment. There's no single day where everything suddenly clicks. Instead, it shows up quietly. Almost easy to miss. A child drops something and pauses. Not to look at you, not to wait for instructions, but to think. Then they fix it on their own. Another moment. They get frustrated. You expect the usual reaction, the escalation, the resistance, but it doesn't come. They take a breath, adjust, try again. And for a second, it feels unfamiliar because no one told them to do that. And that's when it hits you. This was never about controlling behavior. It was about building something underneath it. Because discipline in this system isn't the starting point. It's the result, the visible surface of something much deeper. What Japanese parenting quietly reveals is a completely different order of operations. Not correction first, connection first, not rules first, identity first, not control first, trust first. And here's the part most people overlook. When those elements are in place, discipline stops being something you have to enforce. It starts happening on its own, gradually, quietly, almost invisibly. That's why, from the outside, it looks effortless. But it's not effortless. It's early. The real work happens long before anyone notices. In the tone of your voice, in the way you respond, in the small expectations you repeat every day. Moments that feel insignificant at the time, but stack over weeks, months, years, until one day you're no longer managing behavior. You're witnessing it. And that leads to a shift that changes everything, because the question itself changes. It's no longer, how do I make my child behave? That question keeps you stuck in reaction. Instead, it becomes something deeper, more powerful. What kind of person is my child becoming through what I do every day? Because behavior is temporary, it comes and goes, but identity stays. It anchors decisions, it guides actions, it shapes responses, even when no one is watching. And once that identity is aligned, you don't chase discipline anymore, you don't force it, you don't negotiate with it, it simply follows, naturally, like something that was being built all along, finally revealing itself.